today, what I've got planned for you people is more arts and craft and textures and whatnot in that beautiful software to um, make your dreams come true. And for some reason, there is a keyboard here and I can't get rid of it. So, I mean, there's that. And oh, it's gone. Great. Okay. Um, right. So that's the plan I have for today. But we're not just going to talk about texture. We're going to talk about like how Harmony makes working with textures a bit like unique but bear with me, it'll be fine. So what I have planned for you today is I have a little rough animation I made some time ago of a bird because birds are pretty cool. And I'm just going to show like diverse ways to not just clean it up, because we've talked about cleanup like 2 streams in a row. So I'm gonna like do something different for now, and we're gonna clean it in like different ways, just to show you like the possibilities. Because some people think of that beautiful software as only made for rigging or cutout and stuff, but it's a massive powerhouse for hand-drawn as well. And on the menu today, I have 2 things. I have one style that is made using brushes. Like, oops, and another thing that happens with technology, I had to use an older file because my computer didn't want to take any hard drive or any new files. But, we're going to make this work. It's fine. Some things happen. Like Bob Ross would say, it's happy incidents, and we're going to be okay. And there we go. Just find a frame that I didn't dribble over. Oh my God. Anyway, so we're going to use like brushes texture on this. And we're going to also use pencil texture, because that's something usually we don't know that much about. All right, so let's start fresh with a different one. Boop. Leave. You can leave. I'm going to go grab my rough here, and I'm going to draw on top of it. So I'm going to make a new drawing layer. And that drawing layer, since I went in my scene settings and I made these settings, my drawing resolution is higher than usual because I'm working with texture. So if you just open a brand new Harmony file, make sure that if you want to work with very, very detailed texture, make sure that your pixel density for vector drawings is a bit higher. You do not need to do that if you're going with pure vector. It's only for textures. And then you press OK. So that means that whenever I create a drawing, it'll be able to like sustain nice textured brushes. All right. And speaking of brushes, I made a couple of brushes for this project. So I'm just going to go and get them. If you're curious about how to make your own little brushes, you're lucky, because I have a video about it. And we kind of talked about it last stream. So you have like so many things that you can check with these brushes. Brush texture, they're here. Boop. And it's nothing fancy. Like most of for these brushes, I only use Harmony's default tips. Like I didn't create anything new. This is all from Harmony because I was lazy and I wanted to see just how far I could push this little software. Yeah, the 4 brushes were added to the brush preset list. This is great. So I have a couple of brushes to show them to you first. These are like brush for the brush. These are not pencils. So I have one for the main lines that I like you to use because they're very, very opaque. I have one that is made for little scratches here and there if I want to add like a bit of textures to my work. I have one to do little blushes, because when you get a little pink brush, you can make some sweet little blushes. Ooh, Don't forget to turn that off because yeah, you can get some little blushes here and there. And I have the one I call the thicker line that is really made to just add a lot of texture to my work. So if I were going to clean up using these, they're a bit, I like to clean up and draw with textured vectors more than full bitmaps because I've become to, I kind of started to get accustomed to, oops, to working with vectors, because then if I have these lines and I have this one, it's so much easier to just do that and select all my strokes instead of like going into the like raster way of doing like I want this line and then you have to kind of pay attention and cut the line. It's so annoying. So that's why I use vector lines even in my cleanup. A lot more flexible. So then I would just use my vector lines that has texture to clean up my beautiful animation. And I'm going very quick because the goal today is not to talk that much about the brush because we talked about it last week. So, you know, I'm going to go briefly over it. I'm going to add some eyes to that beautiful bird. Yeah, so fierce. And then I can add some scratches here and there. And I'll be sure to add them in a draw behind fashion so that they appear behind the eyes, behind the black line, for example. But even the brush has its limitation because once you drew with the brush, it's there. You can't do anything about it. So that's why I typically use the brush more for rough because it's kind of, I can get rid of it. It's not so bad. But what I like to use when I clean up is actually, surprisingly, the pencil. So I'm just going to go and show you my second example, the one that doesn't have so many drabbles on top of it. Go on the first frame. There we go. So I have this second example. Oops. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I have this second example, and I'm just going to hide the rough so it's not disturbing us. And this one is made using the pencil tool. Believe it or not, this is all pencil. It's not a brush. Dun, 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 dun. So what is the big advantage of cleaning up and like doing a style using the pencil tool instead of the brush? The big advantage is that even though I drew this, if I have a camera movement, and I need to zoom in on that pretty bird, what I can do is simply go to my drawing, which usually will need to have a proper name. You know, like that. Yeah. And I'm going to get my lines. And what I can do is just select all the lines with Control A. And that means that I'll be able to resize the line a little bit because it was drawn using the pencil. Like this. I'm just going to take a snapshot so that we can compare. And I'm going to make it really exaggerated. Like I'm going to make that line, these lines really big. Okay, so of course that's not what you're supposed to do, but that's kind of what the software allows you to do. So that's great, right? So usually you would have to be careful and not make it that big, but it's really great to just adjust a little bit your line. So if I have this and I want to change the size a little bit, just a little bit, you are able to adjust. And this is not something that is possible in raster. It's just impossible. But I converted Jessie to a pencil tool. Yeah. Oh yeah, please ask questions in the chat because I love to answer questions. It stops me from talking and talking. Yeah, so I will deconstruct a little bit about how I made this, because my goal in life it's I'm not lazy. I'm an efficient person, and my goal in life is to have things be more efficient. Um, so like these kind of style of animation, they're the same one that you see in like a Daisy short film or the Xerox era movies like Aristocats, 101 Dalmatian, Robin Hood, Wolfwalker that just came out also have this specific style, which is what I tried to mimic in a digital world. Um, and but Xerox era, for those who don't know, it came from when people were working with the old animation cell. Oops, I'm gonna take a black colored line, please. People were working with these cells, like the plastic cells, and they had the line on one layer, and then they would have the color on the other side. But in the past, it costed so much money to have somebody trace the drawing to clean up. So what they kind of did is they took the paper drawing with the sketches and they just were able to photocopy them with the Xerox printer, which is why we called it the Xerox style or era. So instead of having somebody clean up, they just took the drawing of the paper drawing and they photocopied it on a plastic cell. So that all you needed to do was the painting. You didn't need to add the cleanup stage. So all these years ago, this was actually made to save money. But nowadays, we're trying to reproduce this style in the computer, and more often than not, it can get a little pricier because you need to like fake roughing and stuff. So I love that style so much, and I'm always trying to find the most efficient way to replicate this style. If you're wondering, you can just look out for Xerox era animation, and you're gonna have so many examples. So that's the end of that little history class, and we're gonna go back to actually working in the software. But learning all these techniques, that how they were done in real life, really helps to apply them in a digital world. So how did I come up with that one? So for this technique, I tried to watch and look at many different reference, and I came up with a kind of a cool, interesting recipe of how to do that. Oh, you're talking about the color. So, of course, they had names in my other versions. Always name your palette is really important, especially if you're working in a team. And if you're wondering why my palette is like this, it's because I'm using the swatch mode. So if you click here, it's a list. And if you right click, you can go to swatch mode, which is great. Right. So now what I wanted to say, I forgot. Yeah. So how did I break this up? Because what is harder to do when you're working digitally, if you want to replicate that style, is that you have to consider that all these years ago, when people, all these years ago, when people used the Xerox technique, of course, they were just photocopying the rough sketches of the animators. So if I had like a character here, they were just photocopying this, and then people would go with little paintbrushes, and they would just go here and paint the cells one by one. All right, there was no bucket tools in real life, folks. You needed to paint it with little brushes and stuff. Okay. So when you're coming to the computer, of course, we don't want to have artists hand paint the frames, because I mean, it would be amazing, but it's time consuming and stuff. So we have to find a way to make it very efficient. But if you have a very, very sketchy look, if you try to paint it with the bucket, even with a close gap or a close, even with the close gap tool, it's gonna be a bit hard to sometimes fill the gaps. And I mean, Harmony is pretty great at closing said gaps. But sometimes you can miss some, and sometimes if you leave gaps that are a bit too big, sometimes the computer can have a bit of difficulty doing it because it's a computer, right? So to kind of solve this issue, what I like to do when I do the Xerox style, and I'm going to share this secret tip with you because you deserve it, because you took the time to come here and learn. So I will at least teach you something. It will not be about me talking about how awesome animation is for an hour. We will learn. So what I tend to do is I will take my pencil and I'm going to do a first pass of the cleanup that is very, very, very perfect. Like, it's not sketchy at all. It's kind of like boring in a way. So I'll take I will take my pencil and I will give it a texture. That's what I forgot. I'm going to go get a nice pencil texture for my pencil. I have this one made already, but if you're wondering how to create a pencil texture, fortunately, I have a video about it. But I'm just going to go get my little texture that I made for this video. There we go. Boop. And I'll be using this one to clean up my character. Oops. Did I take the right one? Did I? Yes, I did. Okay. So that's the thing that makes my pencil look like a brush stroke. Of course, don't zoom too close because, you know, it's not supposed to be zoomed that close because I made a small texture. But yeah, so I would start to make a very clean first pass of my animation with kind of a thin line. And I'm doing this on the line art layer. So I'm going to do this very, very, very perfect and not sketchy at all. Like this. Gonna give it a little eye shape. Gonna do the beak quickly like this. So the goal when you do this passive cleanup is not to be super expressive and crafty and stuff. It's just so that your color art will have a solid base to work with. Like that. Boop, boop. I'm going to do the body very quickly too, because it's important. Like that, like that. Oh, it's off the screen. I'm just going to make a line because that's what animation does. If you don't see it, don't clean it. Whoop. Like this. That works, that works. I need to do this. This last little line. All right, so that's my basic cleanup. So if I press K to see my vector lines, it's very, very clean, like that. How am I able to select the overlap and delete it? The overlap. Do you mean something like this? Boop, boop. I think that's the cutter tool. And you can just use a cutter and like Fruit Ninja your lines away, like that. If that's what you meant. Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna say it one last time because I get asked that question every stream. So, you know, it's very important to know that. So if you are cleaning up with the brush or the pencil tool, who cares? You can do like lines like this. And if you want to have boxes with these, you can just take the cutter tool, that little thingy here. I can make it bigger, so you have to squint and look at this cutter. And you can, and when I say Fruit Ninja way, it's really just you use the lasso and you slice the lines and they are going to leave. Depending on your style, you can change the tip style to round or to anything you desire, depending on what you need. When I do traditional, I tend to leave it to flat, just because when I, when I, sometimes if a line is too big, when you try to cut it in a round shape, the tip will go further away than the other one, like that. So if you have it set to flat, you don't see that. Ooh, so convenient, right? But it really depends on the style that you choose, because sometimes this is also cool. It makes some little imperfection that becomes perfect. Yeah, and then you just fruit ninja your lines away. I love to do that. It's so fun. All right, so where was I? Yeah, okay, so this is the basic cleanup. If I press on K, you see, oh, I actually did a decent job. Can make that pretty. Boop, 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 boop. Right, so it's very clean, and this is going to be super easy for the computer to process once I throw it to my color art. So speaking of the color art, I'm just gonna go here and press on the button. My button is gone. Oh yeah, I need the drawing tool. There it is. Create color art from line art. And then I'll have my line art here, and on the color art layer, level, because I call them level because otherwise it's too confusing. So line art level, color art level. By the way, I went to my drawing view because it's a bit easier to understand what's going on with the world in that view. So drawing view, line level, color art level. So you see how clean that is? This will take like 5 seconds to color. So I'll create a new color palette. And we're gonna paint it together. So you have 5 seconds to suggest some colors in there. And in the meantime, I'm gonna use placeholder colors because Harmony allows you to do that. So we're going for purple. Purple is good. I'll take it. Thank you. Somebody told me good job, and that's really nice. I appreciate. So I'm gonna go with a little purple here for the head. I like that color here, so I'm just gonna change this one to a darker purple. Ooh, that's gonna be so cool. And you see, so it's very quick to color that character. And I'm gonna show you what could have happened if I didn't do that technique. Oh, I like the beak in the bright blue. This bird is a rainbow bird. Oh yeah. Hi, Bubek. I'm happy that you think this is great. Welcome aboard this ship that is going in a direction that I don't know, but it's going somewhere, so that's great. Oops. Right, okay. So this is, ooh, this is, so you see how quick that was? That's great. If I did something else, if I did a very, very messy style of cleanup, like that, to give a very rough look to my animation, if I try to color this, if I press on K, no, K, not H. By the way, if you didn't know, H is to change from one layer to the other, just so you know. But I wanted to press on K. Okay, so you see how many vector points that does? If you're trying to color this, Harmony will, like, your computer will probably have a bad time trying to decipher all of these thingies. So if I take my line work and I try to put it on my color art, you know, it's working, but if you have all of your frames like that, your computer might have kind of a bad time doing that. So but the line work is way more interesting here than it is here, because this is too perfect. So what I do is I take advantage of what Harmony has to offer, the art levels. So you have the line art, the color art, and you also have the overlay and the underlay. So I'm going to use these two to make my animation crazier. So on the overlay, this is where I will go and I'll take a different color, like a different black, and maybe make it a little less opaque. And it's on the overlay that I'm going to go ahead and go crazy and expressive and stuff. And usually I do that before the color, but you know, that'll do the trick. So then I'm going to go here, and this is where I'm going to make my line more expressive. And I'm going to trace over it. And that's actually a very fun part to do. Of course, I'm going very broad because I know most of you watch on mobile maybe, and I want you to be able to see the textures. But if you look at my other reference, the one that I had in pictures, I usually go with a more subtle style like that. So if you take the time to do it, it can look good. But, you know, we're going to just have fun with it together now. All right, so I'm doing this. I might want to make my line a little less opaque, but that's me. All right, like that. And then you just kind of trace over, oops, your drawing. And you might think that this is counterproductive, but for all the time you save in color, this is actually really interesting. And in the long run, if you want, you can even use this technique, because if you have a clean line art, this will allow you to maybe create your shapes and, I mean, color them. Here, put some little colors in there. And eventually you can go in the node view, and since we're working in a software that allows you to do your own compositing, how amazing is that? I think it's pretty cool. I can just go ahead and get my line art layer, for example, and have it not show up in the render. Just gonna go get my overlay as well. And my color art, you know, the 4 levels. And if I decide that in my, I don't want to see my line art, you can just, oops, you can just remove it. So then you'll be left, for example, with just the messy line, but your line art will be done just to give a rough idea to your color art. So boring line art, just to give an idea to your color art. And on the overlay, this is where you're going to go nuts and do your crazy cool cleanup thing. So that's a technique that I would love people to use more. So that's why I'm telling the secret, because I think that it's a very efficient technique that can help have more of a hand-drawn feel to your animation while still not going too crazy over budget, you know, because it's always important to keep in budget. Right? So that's something you can do. So of course, when I work with the software, I try to keep my line art and my color art doing what they're supposed to do. So a very clean line art to give an idea to your color art. But then I love to use the overlay and underlay to do something else. And I know that on this test that I had, I'm showing the picture just so that I don't have to render it. That's actually not the right one. I'm talking about This one, that's the one I did with the brush. So this is the pencil and this is the brush. So they give out different looks, but they're both really great. And you see here, I added a false construction line. I say false because we add them after we drew, so it's kind of not so much construction. It is still how we would draw it, but you know, it's not real. And what I did is I used the same technique I'm showing you. So there was a very clean line art on the line art. The color art was easier to do because of that clean line art. And then on the overlay, I added the messy lines. And then on the underlay level, I added the false construction. All right, so that's what I'm going to show you right now with that one. So we have our line art. I'm going to get rid of what I don't need here, little messy things I did. And on my overlay, I'm just going to finish quickly this. Time is running. Da, 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 da. There we go, something like that. Very, very quick. And oh, by the way, I also love to have maybe a lighter or a bit darker color and take my little scratch. Oh, I forgot my scratch pencil. Okay, whatever. I'm gonna try to fake it with that one. And I'll try and I'll make it a bit less visible like that. And I love to just create some zones here to give a little bit of a color to my line work as well. And these will appear behind the black one, the black line. So it just makes my color bleed a little bit. And I say it again, it might look a bit tedious of a process, but honestly, if you want to have a hand-drawn look, it's always going to be tedious anyway. This is just a bit less tedious than it could be. If done like another way. But you know, that's how I kind of like to do my little sketchy things. And yeah, and if I go to my underlay, this is where I'm going to create and draw my false construction line. So I'm going to take a darker line, a black line here, and this is where oh, and usually it's done before the color. So let me just turn off the color art, because you can do that. Turn off the color art. You just go into your properties and you turn it off. Boop. And then I'll be able to, thank you. And then this is where I would go to my underlay and just create kind of a false, oh yeah, I don't see it because I didn't connect it in my node view because I showed you something different before. That's why now it's working. Thank you. Right, so I'll just go and create my false construction to give a little more personality to my drawing. Like that. And when I turn my color art back on, then in compositing, we would be able to go play with the different art levels and kind of have fun with that. So gotta go get my things. Why did I remove them? Oh, actually, I'm gonna just copy them from the thing I made before because I'm a prepared person. Whoop! There we go. Come on. Come here. I need a new computer because this one is weird. All right, but it's okay. I've got them here. And the underlay, now that's the one I forgot before. I'm just gonna add these to my compositing thing. And this can be something that the animators don't even have to worry about because it would be just in compositing. So we could make them a little system doing it so that they only have to worry about their drawing, but when we connect it to the system, it would work. And that's usually what I do when I work in production. I have like a composite that I will rename hello, connect your art here. And then all the animator has to do is literally just to connect his drawing here, and it will be processed through our little thingy. So that's usually what I do. And now for the underlay, if I look at it into my render view, maybe it's a bit too opaque. So I have two choices because I'm working with vector. It's insane. I can either go on my underlay art layer, art level here, and make maybe my lines a bit thinner. That's an option that I have. Maybe thinner, a bit more thin, like that. Okay, and then maybe I want to make them less visible. So to make them less visible, I can go into my color palette here and make that color less visible if I want to. I can also maybe make it a different color, like that. Or you can even have a very opaque line. And I don't know, maybe you want to go into your node view and put a transparency, but only on these construction lines. So that's great because you don't have 100 different layers to handle. Because you only have one drawing layer that is divided in 4 levels. And then you can just adjust that transparency. The reason why I tend to prefer to do it in comp is because if I want to edit how much transparent it is depending on where we are in my scene, you can keyframe that transparency. How amazing is this? I think it's pretty amazing. Somebody asked if I have a advice for designing a color palette for a show. I could imagine that's not just... Yeah, you don't just pick up colors from the color wheel, and that's actually super interesting. There is a thing called color theory, and you can Google it if you want. I might post a link about it on my YouTube later today, because that's a very good question. There's a lot about color theory, and if you're interested, we could make another stream and talk about it for hours, because that's how interesting it is. You can talk about it for hours. But yeah, and that's a technique that I love. So of course there's many ways, different ways to do it. It really depends on what you want to achieve as a look. The takeaway of that technique is that you use your line art level and your color art kind of in a regular fashion, just so that they do their job respectively, so that the line art can, because the line art's purpose is just to give kind of an information to the color art so that you can color things efficiently. But then the overlay and the underlay, by all means, just use them to whatever suits you. Maybe you want to add your construction lines on one. Yeah, I want to go crazy with the details, because then again, this is going to be crazy in terms of vector count. So you kind of need a good computer to handle it. But since you only have one layer with that crazy count, this will not translate to your color art. Your color art is super smooth. It's going to be super easy to process for your computer. So this part is a bit more crazy, but you don't have a choice when you're working with vector. And that's what allows you to change the size of your line after you drew them, which is incredible for camera movement and stuff. So, so yeah, we tend to think that the pencil tool is only for rigging, to create these very perfect things. But honestly, I think the pencil is great for more than that. You can be more little pencil. You can make very you can make super expressive drawing as well with that tool, and you can get all the advantages of using it in your production, because you can create line boiling with that. So if you want to have another frame with your eye and you copy paste it, copy, and then you want to edit the gradient or like edit the texture, you can just slide that little thing across. So you can copy paste and it doesn't look like it's copy pasted because the line is boiling. So there is so much to do with that. What monitor do I use and how faithful it is with color? I use a Cintiq, a very old, like 10 years old Cintiq, and I think it's pretty accurate, but I know that you have to understand that screen tablet will always be dimmer than a monitor. This is because if they were as bright as a monitor, they would like combust themselves. So always note that if you're using a screen tablet, it's not going to be accurate in colors. I say it's accurate because I know what mine does. I know that it's a bit dimmer, so I have to check on my other monitor to get the perfect colors. But I think it's pretty great so far. But yeah, so just know that if you're using a screen tablet, be careful of your colors, because if you put them or if you print them, you might have something different. But there's a lot of websites to help you monitor, calibrate your screen. And now the last thing I want to show you, because we started a bit late, so we're going to end a tiny bit late. You can blame my computer for that, but it's old, so don't be too rough on it. I built it in 2014. And since I built it, maybe that's why it's not working so well, but you know, we're trying. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show you, the last thing, is that let's say that I have this design and I want to have kind of a, if you look at my little reference that I prepared for the stream here, on the beak, we have kind of a rough thing going on here. So if you worked in other software, you would need to have that part be its own layer and then use a clipping mask, right? So for those of you who are kind of accustomed with digital art, most people know what a clipping mask is. It will just allow you to use that zone. Oh, that's not very visible. It will allow you to use that zone. And if you have it on its own layer, if you color like that, it will still only appear on the triangle. All right. But like I said, in other softwares, you would need to have this part of the color be its own layer. And, you know, you can end up having like 50 layers for your character. So I was thinking about how can I do this more easily in Harmony, and I found a solution. So since we're working with vectors and not raster, we have access to the powerful color palettes. So, and we have a node called the color override that people are usually scared of. And and good news, you don't have to use the color override, because Toon Boom developed kind of a tiny baby color override, because the color override, people are usually scared of it, and it's okay. If you open the software for the first time, you can be scared of the color override, but trust me, it's a very cool tool. So you should be learning how to use it as soon as you can, because it's amazing. And if you want to know how to use it, we have a Learn portal, and I have a YouTube channel, so you don't have any excuses. So there's a node called the color selector that does exactly what that part of a color override does. So it's going to render selected colors only. You can go color override. We don't need you. We're going to use the color selector. So what that does is exactly how it's called. It's just showing you one color. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to connect it here. And that color selector, I'm going to say, okay, beyond this gate, the only color that is allowed to pass is the color I used for the tip of the beak. Amazing. So if I put a little display here to show you what... Oh, actually, screw the display. I'm just going to show you this thing. So the only thing that goes through here is the blue. So what are we going to do with that? We're going to use it as a mask. All right. So if we were not late, I would have asked people to guess what I'm going to do with that. But, you know, we're a bit late, so I'm just going to do it. But yeah, but I'm pretty sure that somebody would have found it because you're all very incredible people that are really interested in learning. So I'm just going to go get a cutter node and a new drawing layer. And that drawing, what it's going to be, is it's going to be the rough lines I put on my beak. So I'm going to go get maybe a different color, a bit less dark. And I'm going to go ahead and give it like a little texture. And of course, you can draw that texture, or you can like use an image. It's not important. And then I'm going to go in my node view, and I will just use my color selector and connect it in the mask. And it's literally a mask. You can't miss it. It's a mask. And the problem is that now my lines are on the outside of my beak, which is kind of counterproductive. But I'm just gonna like double click here, and magic, my textures are on the beak, which is pretty fun. Get rid of my rough. Just show you. And so now my things are appearing on top of my line art, but you know, don't stress it. You can just go and take your new things here, and I'm gonna put it in a sandwich between my line art and my color art by pulling the wire like that. And ooh, that looks way better. And like I said, instead of a rough line that you draw, if that's what you fancy, you could have taken just a little texture and just put it in there instead. That's a texture, and it just needed to be renamed, you know, texture. And yeah, it could be a texture instead. And if you want that texture to be, instead of being black and white like that, you can also put it into a blending node. You know, like the possibilities with that software are infinite. You take a little idea and then you can throw it in a direction that is out of control. And I think we need to end the stream soon, because otherwise I'm going to keep doing stuff here for hours, because that's usually what I do in my free time. I just do some harmony shenanigans like that and try to do stuff. So that's the essence of my little technique here to imitate a Xerox style. And if you put some time into it and you give it some love, you can get some very interesting results like this one, or like this one. Yay! Of course, the texture that I have here is just a texture that I applied on top of my whole animation using something that is called the exposure fill. And if you're interested in learning this, I have a link for you. I'm just going to give you right here. And yeah, I'm just going to check the chat for any last question. And that'll be it. Da, 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 da. Yes, like the fish face says, the cutter is your best friend. And that's true for the cutter tool and the cutter node. They're both pretty amazing. And yeah, so if you want to learn more, you can head over to the Toon Boom community page. We have a cool Discord channel full of the loveliest people. And we have a Learn portal to learn more. I have a YouTube channel, and I hope that you're gonna use your precious time to have fun or learn more with that. So just before we leave, I'm just going to repeat the essence of the technique. You use your line art and your color art to do your basic, to do your basic stuff. And then you can use the overlay or the underlay art to create some looks some styles. And I like to use the color selector to add certain designs only on certain colors of my character. All right, so I hope you had fun, and I can't wait to see you on the other stream doing more art stuff. All right, so bye-bye.